Disney princesses are great. Now, the Disney princess brand gets a lot of hate, and some of that is deserved, but I think that most people will look at the individual princesses and say that they like them. At least the modern ones. Most of the modern ones. Everyone praises modern Disney princesses for being more progressive and independent than past princesses, because apparently they aren't just waiting around for a
big strong man
to come rescue them. People just look at most of the early princesses and turn up their noses or just ignore them. But this isn't fair. So I decided I will look at each Disney princess and assess whether or not that claim actually holds up. Now, some of these princesses I have a lot to say about, so each princess is getting her own video and I will be doing it in order of movie release. There are a couple of rules I have set in place I need to get out of the way first. The first rule is that these will actually be princesses considered by Disney to be princesses. Yes, there is an official Disney princess list. I will be making exceptions for Anna and Elsa, as I think most people assume they're Disney princesses anyway, and that's what Disney wants you to assume. So no, I will not cover Meg or Nala or Dory or these two. Maybe I will one day, but those videos will not be part of this series. My second rule is I will not be covering any material from sequels, spin-off TV shows, or appearances in shows like Sophia the First or Once Upon a Time. I will only be looking at the princess in the context of the film she is from. Once again, I will make an exception for Frozen 2, as that was a film that was actually released in the theaters. Okay, with all that said, let's talk about Snow White, and I really don't have a lot to say about her. I feel like Snow White is kind of a hard princess to discuss because she is very basic. I think there are two major reasons for this, and the first reason is the nature of her film. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs not only has a long title, but is also an extremely important and historic film. This was the first full-length feature animated film, and this was Disney's first full-length animated production. So it's kind of a double whammy. If you are all interested in film and the history of film, you should watch this movie. What this movie really is, though, is a display of the animation prowess of Disney at the time. The story and characters aren't too complex because they don't need to be. This ties into the second reason, that being her purpose in the story. Snow White may be the titular character, but way more development is put into the evil queen and most of the dwarves. However, Snow White is not entirely a blank slate and a pushover. This video is about defending her, because there are things about Snow White that are worth defending. It's true that Snow White isn't really fleshed out, but we do know something about her. She is a princess, but has been subjected to a life of hard work and servitude by the evil queen, and as such, she's not afraid to get her hands dirty and work hard. That was something I was really surprised by rewatching this movie for this video. People complain about these old princesses pushing girls to wanting to be housewives and to wait for a man, but if anything, Snow White shows just how difficult it is to run a household. Disney softens the blow by having the forest animals help her and Snow White taking joy in her tasks, but the implication of hard work is still there. That's another thing I want to bring up. Snow White is incredibly positive throughout the whole film. Although she's scared of the forest at first, she soon turns that attitude around and adapts to her situation pretty well. She isn't afraid to stick to her guns either. She forces the dwarves to take better care of themselves out of kindness, but she stands firm in the face of refusal. It's honestly pretty cool to see a princess hold her ground on something that's pretty small in the grand scheme of things, but is also so important. Snow White isn't flawless either. She's portrayed as naive, and it's her naivety that gets the best of her in the end. The evil queen takes advantage of her innocence and her kindness in order to poison her. It's not only a great move on the part of a villain to exploit the main character's weakness, that's just good writing, but it's also a great lesson to kids to be careful and that an abundance of kindness to strangers is dangerous. Now, I want to address the elephant in the room, and no, it is not the age gap between Snow White and the princess, a can of worms I am not opening today, but it is the very idea of Snow White waiting around for a prince. This doesn't happen in the film at all. She has a chance meeting with the prince at the very beginning of the movie, and then a full 50 minutes go by before she even mentions the prince again. At no point is Snow White expecting the prince to come get her. She daydreams about the prince vaguely by mentioning him to the dwarves when they ask her if she's ever been in love, but that's it. Then the prince comes and does save her in the end, which I will excuse only because it's a traditional fairy tale. But my main point still stands. Snow White never expected the prince to save her. She never waits around for a man to do anything for her. She asks the animals to help her, and she asks the dwarves if she can stay with them, but those are still things she takes initiative with and does on her own along with other things. I'm sick of this fake feminism calling every female character who is constantly belittling men or doing physically strong things a bad example for girls or a tool of the patriarchy and misogyny. Being mean to people based on their gender is sexist, and not every girl is going to grow up to be a physical goddess, so it's bad if that's all girls see and are told to look up to, because it makes them feel terrible when they realize they can never be that. Having a princess who has a work ethic and strives to be kind to others is good, because that's something that anybody can work toward and admire. Whether you're a boy or a girl, you can admire Snow White's love of animals, her positive outlook on her bleak situation, and her determination to do a job and do it well. Snow White is probably one of the weakest Disney princesses in terms of character, but there is still something there. Something to be loved and looked up to, not scoffed at and cast down. She is a good princess. Well, I just wrote a 1200 word script on Snow White, so that's incredible. It's also incredible just how much support my channel has gotten recently. My Deku video did way better than I expected, and it's really pushed me to work harder on my videos and this channel. I worked harder on my Stranger Things video than on any other video I've ever done before, and that's because of you guys. Y'all give me so much support both on Twitter and YouTube, and I really can't thank you enough. Anyway, what do y'all think about Snow White? Let me know in the comments. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you have a fantastic day.